Good morning. Everybody hears me? Yeah. Well, it's a nice day, first day of sun for a while, and welcome and thank you for coming. And we have a great program today. We have three speakers, and the way we are going to set it up is we will have Miss Peggy Troller speak for the first 40 minutes, and then we will have an intermission. After that, we'll return and we'll have Miss Betterman and Miss Deb Solis speak, followed by a Q&A session. Please note in your evaluation, change the third speaker from Jennifer Fisher to Deb Solis. Dr. Troller has been a registered nurse for 35 years. She holds an associate's, bachelor degrees in nursing, a master's degree in marriage and family therapy, and a doctorate degree in nursing practice leadership. She has had experience in oncology and hospital nursing, home health, pediatrics, fragile home care, medical and surgical, telemetry, and travel nursing. And now she's employed with UW Health as a transitional care nurse, case manager, serving the geriatric population as they leave the hospital and returns to their homes. Dr. Troller will identify the role of the nurse in a coordinated healthcare environment and addresses the common health concerns. Please welcome Dr. Troller. Thank you.
Thank you. I've been asked to explain the letter salad after my name, so I will do that. The DNP, Doctorate of Nursing Practice, so I'm a doctor nurse. MS MFT means I have a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. And RN, you guys know that one. BC means I'm board certified, and I'll actually address that in a later slide. So I'll tell you what that's about. I want to tell you that the more letters that you put after a nurse's name, the more we want to talk. So I'm going to warn you in advance. My slides are very word heavy. Please don't try to read them. I put a lot of information in because I got so excited about speaking to you all that my first draft had over 100 slides. And then I knew that these ladies were coming to talk about community events, so I got to cut all that out. So then I only had 76 slides. So, and I've honed it down to 30 something, I think. So I know that this PowerPoint is going to be available to you online, and you have microscopic handouts as well. So please don't feel like you have to read along. If you do, it'll just be too much words with me yapping at you as well. So let's just talk, eh? So I just want to give you two things. Faisal and Sandy asked me to talk about geriatric nursing. What is that? So when I distilled it down, I wanted to talk a little bit about geriatrics in the healthcare setting and also some common geriatric health concerns. So when we all grew up, this is what we thought of as aging. This is the stereotype of aging that we all had coming up. But baby boomers are different, and we're changing the way things are looked at. So now we look at ourselves like that. You know, the idea of aging has changed quite a bit over time. So geriatrics, what is that? So the first thing I want to talk about is, there are two words that you might hear when you talk about geriatrics or the care of older people. There's geriatrics and there's gerontology. Geriatrics is specifically the health care of older adults. It's, specifically pretty much a medical view of older adults and their caregivers. Gerontology has a broader view. So gerontology is the study of aging from middle age as we go forward in life. So it's going to look at more than just medical. It's going to look at physical, emotional, social, environmental issues of aging and try to form that into a circle, a whole view of a person and their environment. So a person who takes this kind of view, which is most of us who deal with an older population, might refer to themselves as gerontologists. So as I said, the board certified, that means I've taken a test, that means I know a little something about. I'm certified in gerontological nursing, not geriatric, but gerontological. So looking at the entire sphere surrounding my clients. So members of the geriatric or gerontological, and I will say these terms are used quite interchangeably, but now that I've told you the distinction. So there are a lot of people that can be involved in a geriatric team. Some people might see one or two of this team, some people might see several, some people might need them all. So they're comprised of practitioners, MDs, nurse practitioners, nurses, therapists, physical, occupational, speech, mental health, nutritionists, pharmacists, and this doesn't even include the entire community assistants that are out there. These are just within the medical field. So whatever somebody needs, we're going to try to get them the help of whoever is best suited to what they need. From a nursing standpoint, we all say patient care. You ask a nurse what we do, it's patient care. And, that's our default. But in geriatrics, we're going to expand that a little bit. So I'm not just looking at what's happening today with my patients, but what happening today is going to affect things 6 months from now and a year from now. I'm looking at educating people and their caregivers. What do they need to know now? What will they need to know into the future? What kind of mental health concerns are adding into what's going on medically? What kind of rehabilitation concerns might there be? The older we get, the longer it takes for us to recover from illness or injury. So rehabilitation tends to assume more importance. End-of-life care. As we age, this becomes more and more important. How do we want the end of our lives to be? And also caregiver support and training. Caregivers are essential, and they have a huge job that's physically, mentally and emotionally demanding, and they don't tend to get a lot of support. That was actually what my doctoral research was on. So when would you want a geriatrician? Everybody usually has their primary care provider. When would you seek a geriatrician instead? If someone is beginning to have significant impairment or frailty as you get sicker, if there are multiple diseases going on, including cognitive, that are going to now start impacting each other, if family members and caregivers are under stress trying to help an older person, and if the patient or family members are having difficulty with a complex treatment regime, that might be a time to bring in a geriatrician and the team that works with them. So a geriatric assessment is going to be more than a physical exam. When we're young and middle-aged, we go in, they listen to our heart, our lungs, look at our throats, and say, okay, come back next year. But a geriatric assessment includes a lot more. How is vision? How is hearing? Is this person a fall risk? Are they having troubles with incontinence? Is their depression impacting them? Do they have a substance abuse problem? All of these things, and you'll notice, I must think osteoporosis is really important because I have it on there twice. So obviously that's something really important. Polypharmacy, it's very, very easy over time. We go to a doctor, they start us on a medicine. We go to another doctor, they start us on another medicine. I've seen people on 32, 33 prescription medicines at one time, and then how do those start mixing with each other? So it's an important thing to yearly go through the medication list and say, what can we get rid of? So I was in urgent care last night, got a sinus infection. I was in urgent care, and while I was there, I removed 3 things from my medication list. It's just a constant battle to take things off of the medication list. So a geriatric assessment is going to come up with medical diagnoses, like we would expect, but it's also going to develop a treatment plan going forward. And the most important part is that this plan includes patients, caregivers, and providers. I could come up with a treatment plan for any of you. I could tell you, I'm a nurse. I can tell you what to do, by God. If it doesn't work for you or your caregivers, or you can't afford the medications, or you don't have access to what I'm telling you, what good is that plan of care? So a plan of care needs to be a conversation. Coordination of that care needs to happen through assistance with the geriatric team. And also, sometimes we need to take a look at long-term care needs. Is a person living in a place right now that is well suited to them? Could the future bring changes to that? So again, we're looking at non-medical domains in a geriatric assessment in addition to just disease. So functional capacity, how is somebody managing at home? Can they bathe themselves, dress themselves? Are they able to cook for themselves? Can they get to the grocery store and get groceries? Do they have the ability to get to their doctor's appointments, or is transportation a problem? Using that multidisciplinary team, we will try to address those issues. So we're going to come up with both medical solutions, functional, cognitive, psychosocial. So in the healthcare setting, the healthcare settings can be incredibly complex. So health systems are composed of many different sites. So you might have a hospital and an emergency room, urgent care and clinics, primary clinics, specialty clinics, home health, therapy clinics, behavioral health, all within one health system. And all those pieces are working with each other hopefully well. Now, secondly, people don't always get all of their health care within one health system. So they may have their primary care within one health system, and they may have their specialty care in another. So you may go to Meriter to see your primary care physician, but come to UW for cardiology. So people might have 2 or more health systems that they are also working with. That can add to complexity, because how well do these health systems communicate with each other? If a doctor here and a doctor here both make changes, are they aware of the changes that each other made? Often not. And also, within healthcare settings, unless you have somebody who is identifying themselves as a geriatrician or a gerontologist, they probably don't have a lot of specialized geriatric training. So in pediatrics, they say children are not small adults. In geriatrics, older adults are not just middle-aged adults who have a few more years on them. There are different things to keep in mind. And unfortunately, if you're not trained to think that way, you don't. So beware good intentions. Here's me on a soapbox. I admit it. I admit it. So a health system that many of us interact with is the well-meaning people in our lives. So friends, families, neighbors. They were going to give people a lot of advice, a lot of information, a lot of, I heard from so-and-so who had a brother whose cousin went to the hospital and this happened to them. And we were talking about the La Leche League earlier. Women, you all know this. When you were pregnant, how many people wanted to tell you their labor stories? How many of them were good labor stories that you heard? Right? Did you ever have anybody say, my labor was great? That kid came out, it was awesome. No, that doesn't happen. So people tend to glean a lot of information from a lot of sources that we're not sure how accurate they may be. A big one these days, most of all, Dr. Google. Yes, Dr. Google. Dr. Google can be really good. I want my patients to understand what's going on. So I like when people go online and look for information. I want people to understand their disease, their treatments, their options. That's all great. I just want to leave you guys, if you take nothing else from today, when you go online looking, please, please stick to websites that end in .org or .edu. If a website ends in .com, they're trying to sell you something. The information on it may be completely accurate, and it may be entirely a hoax. So this is just, this is the informal healthcare system that we all interact with. So in primary care, people who choose to be in geriatrics, they generally have more training in age-related changes and syndromes. Also, they have training in team-based care. When I think of the care I give my patients, there's no I in it, it's all we. And I'm always looking for who can I pull in to assist? Who can I, within and outside the healthcare system? I'm going to look at not just medical issues, but functional. Are the people I work with, are they able to eat well? Do they have a safe place to live? What's their entire system, their whole self within the context of their family and community, state, nation, and world? We focus on shared decision making. It's very important to me to know what your goals are, because I can't make any plan until I know them. Well, I don't know how many times I call people on the phone for my job. I'll hang up the phone and say, I get paid money for this. It's awesome. So I enjoy the population I work with tremendously, and most people in geriatrics do as well. As far as MDs go, geriatricians are one of the most satisfied specialties in medicine. And I will tell you, it is not because they rake in a lot of money. So there are new trends in geriatrics. There are things that are up and coming, just like every other field in medicine. Transition management, that's what I do. I help people transition from the hospital back to their home. But every time we move from one place to another in a health system, then that's a transition. So if you go to your doctor's with a problem and he sends you to the emergency room and they send you to the inpatient unit, who might then send you to another unit and then another unit after that, and then you need a little help, so you go to rehabilitation after you leave the hospital, and then you go home, but you need some home health and some community services. Each time you went from one place to another, that's a transition. And each time is a danger point for having things fall through the cracks or miscommunication or problems to develop. So healthcare right now, transition management is really important. We're taking a lot of look at all of those transitions and how can we make them better. Post-acute care. Used to be we got sick, we went to the hospital, we stayed a couple of weeks till we were all better, and we went home. Now we come to the hospital, we stay in the hospital a couple of days, and then we go for some rehabilitation, or we might need a long-term care hospital, or we might go home with some therapy. And there's a lot of post-acute, post-hospital variants that are going on right now, and how can we do this best? Specialty geriatric medicines. Hospitals will have specialized geriatric units, specialized geriatric emergency rooms, acute care for elders teams. Within specialties, there's now geriatric specialties, geriatric oncology, geriatric psychology, and psychiatry. These are specialized, looking at the specialty from the geriatric point of view. Chronic care services. You guys will talk more about that. People tend to need help at home. Some of us have lots of family that can help us, some don't. So sometimes we need a little help around the house. Sometimes we need a lot of help, and that's where case management comes in. A person who can take a look at medical, physical, psychological, emotional, financial, housing, every need, and try to put the whole big picture. How do we help this person the best within this entire context? That's a case manager. Home-based primary care. Some people are too sick or it's too difficult to get into the clinic for a doctor's appointment. Doctor's house calls are coming back. Only now they can be even better than Marcus Welby, because Marcus Welby came with his little back case. Now the doctor can come with their case, but they can also have lab come to the house, x-ray come to the house, therapy come to the house, medical equipment come to the house, pharmacy come to the house. So doctor's house call are making a comeback. Hospital at home. Mount Sinai Hospital in New York will take people from their emergency room, and instead of admitting them to the hospital, they'll admit them to their house or their apartment in New York. And all the things that would happen in the hospital now happen in the apartment. Nurses come there, therapists come there, equipment comes there, pharmacy comes there. Everything comes that would be in the hospital. They have better outcomes, and believe it or not, that costs less. It's very exciting. So, geriatric health concerns. Let's switch topics here. This is a really big issue, obviously. Many of my slides could be entire talks. This is a real overview today. But in terms of geriatric health concerns, the first thing we think is multiple chronic conditions. So, when you're in your 40s or 30s, you might have a disease or a condition. When we get to our 60s, we might have 4. When we get to our 80s, we might have 8. And they all interact with each other. And so that, when you're working with an older population, you have to consider This is one I see a lot in my personal practice. Heart failure and kidney failure. If you have both, what's good for one is bad for the other. What's good for this one is bad for that one. It's a delicate balancing act, and you have to always keep that in mind. So this is something we always keep in mind. I wanted to review the top 10 chronic geriatric health concerns. Now notice I'm not saying diseases here. I'm not talking diseases, I'm talking health concerns, things that affect our general health. Physical activity and nutrition, not a surprise. Every age group in America, these are important. And overweight and obesity. These are American problems, but as we get older, the impact is more upon our bodies if we have low physical activity or overweight. Tobacco, not surprising, right? Substance abuse, this is something people don't want to talk about in an older population, but it's big. I'll talk more about it later. Here's a surprising one, HIV and AIDS. This is in the top 10 chronic health conditions for older adults. Some people developed HIV decades ago, and they're managing it now as a chronic disease. Older adults are also one of the highest demographics for new HIV infections. When our kids meet somebody and go out and go on a date, they talk about safe sex like they talk about what restaurant do we go to. When we try to do that, we're not comfortable. And so older people are less likely to have safe sex than our kids or grandkids are. So HIV is a surprising but true top 10 health condition. Mental health. I will talk more about that. It is a significant issue among older adults. Injury and violence. There's a lot of way older adults get injured. They fall, they have traffic accidents, there's violence, there is such a thing as elder abuse, both physical, emotional, and financial. And so these are health issues for older adults. Environmental quality. So here it's nurses. We keep moving out like this in a circle. Do people have healthy air and water? Can they walk in their neighborhood safely? You know, we want them to get physical exercise, but if they can't walk safely in their neighborhood because of crime or because there's no sidewalks, how do they get that physical activity? Immunization. This has unfortunately become a controversial subject. I stand a pretty hard line. I'm pro-immunization, just saying. So just like younger people now, sometimes they're not getting immunized. Older people sometimes don't, usually because they don't think about it or they don't think they need it. But immunization saves lives. So that's another health concern. Access to health care. We're very lucky in Madison. We're just rich with healthcare resources here, if we have the money to afford it. We don't, not so good. Rural areas have a terrible trouble keeping healthcare providers, especially mental health. Urban areas, same thing. So we are particularly lucky here in Madison, but not everybody is. So physical activity and nutrition, we need it. Here, the World Health Organization has recommendations on physical activity for older adults. Everywhere else you look, they base it on this. This is the gold standard. 150 minutes of moderate intensity or 75 minutes of vigorous intensity aerobic activity a week in at least 10-minute chunks. So you can, do the math there. That's the recommendation. Now, if you do more, you get more benefits. If you have trouble with mobility, adding 3 days a week of balance exercises would be a good idea to help prevent falls. Strengthening exercises 2 days a week, also a good idea for all of us. We lose muscle mass as we age. Let's put some of it back. If you can't do all of this, and a lot of people can't, that's a lot for some people. Anything you do helps. If you walk 10 minutes, it helps. Do it. You don't have to do 150 minutes or then say, I can't do anything. Whatever you do to move your body works. Benefits of physical activity, I won't spend too much time. We've heard all this. It's good for our bodies, it's good for our minds, it helps with chronic diseases, it helps with our mood, it helps with our sleep, all of those good things. There's no downside to physical activity as long as you use your common sense and don't get injured. Don't go too crazy that first day. Depression. Mental health is a big issue among older adults. 6.5 million older adults dealing with depression right now. And depression and other mental health issues lead to both suffering and decreased functional ability. You cannot function well if your mental health is under attack from the inside. It's underdiagnosed and undertreated. Unfortunately, most people will not go into their physician or nurse practitioner or PA and say, I'm having trouble with depression. Can you help me? And sometimes, even if asked, people will say, no, I'm fine. We're a bunch of Midwesterners here, right? We're fine, we're fine. But sometimes we're not. You can, there we go, symptoms of depression. You can sometimes see depression in those people around you. People who are more irritable. They might be more listless. They might be withdrawing from life. They might be sleeping more or less than usual. They might be eating more or less than usual. They might, this is inside, people here might have thoughts of suicide. Again, that's something people generally don't tell you. But if you notice something in somebody you know, and you ask them, they might say, I'm fine, I don't need your help. But they might say, yeah, I'm struggling, I need some help. So, I encourage you, it's very hard when you're in the middle of depression, that by the very nature of the disease, to seek help, because depression is affecting your ability to seek help. So you, as friends and family, you can sometimes make a difference. Can I help you get help? Loneliness and social isolation. These are not the same things, but they're both problems for older adults. So social isolation means you don't have people to interact with. The majority of people over 80 years old live alone because of usually widowhood. And also families move away, friends die, you're not able to get out like you used to, and the social circle can get smaller and smaller and smaller. When I worked home health, sometimes the one visit I would make to somebody's house was the only person they saw all week. So social isolation is an issue. Loneliness is the distress we feel in social isolation. Some people are okay with not having a lot of visitors. They like not a lot of people around. Some people are very not okay with not having people in their lives. It depends. So social isolation and loneliness is something that can be a big deal for elders, and it's something that we can help with both on a community standpoint and in a friend network. Keeping in mind who is not getting out like they used to. And as a community, how can we help everybody in our community have social contacts? Moms with little kids have the same trouble. They can't get out of the house. So how can we as a society look at how to maybe integrate all of our generations and all of our residents in ways to prevent social isolation? So here's some social things, housing support, health and social programs targeted at vulnerable groups. Again, you'll see rural populations are on there. It's a really difficult problem for rural areas. People with chronic mental or physical health issues have trouble getting out and having social interaction. Programs to prevent and deal with elder abuse. Are you guys going to talk any about that? Okay. Community development programs. Again, how do we design our communities for all of the people living there? Substance abuse. This is something that people tend not to want to talk about in older adults. Nobody wants to think about grandma drinking too much or grandpa taking benzodiazepines, but it's there. 2.5 million older adults have an alcohol or drug problem. People admit to the hospital for alcohol-related issues as often as they admit to the hospital for heart attacks. So everybody here think, how many people do you know that have been admitted for a heart attack? How many, you probably know of people that have gone to the hospital for a heart attack. Just as many have gone to the hospital for alcohol-related issues. But they're usually under other diagnoses. But it's a real problem. And it's, again, something that people are hesitant to bring up on their own. I need help. I can't stop drinking. This is sometimes where family and friend can sometimes make a difference. There's a lot of, it's a tricky issue, but it's a really important issue because if you see up there, nearly 50% of people in nursing homes have alcohol-related problems. it definitely impacts the entirety of the life and longevity and disease progression. So if you have trouble, or if you know somebody that has trouble with alcohol or other substances, this is something to be addressed, and I would start with that person's doctor. So, sorry, I got ahead of myself. Here's some of the things that substance abuse can do. Did I miss anything? Oh yeah, cognitive. So, substance abuse can mimic Alzheimer's disease. It can also lead to decreases in cognition, which can then lead to dementia. So both physically, mentally, and psychologically, substance abuse is a real issue. So here's the American Geriatrics Society's recommendations for alcohol intake. So in a week, 7 standard drinks, so average of 1 a day. Standard drink being 1 12-ounce can of beer, 4 to 5 ounces of wine, that's a half a cup, or 1.5 ounces of 80 proof liquor, that's 3 tablespoons. So a serving can be a serving or a serving. So, and as we age, alcohol has more of an effect on our bodies. So what we could drink in our 40s and what we can drink in our 70s are very different. And if we're drinking the same amount, it's having an increased impact on our body. Falls. Falls are a great danger for older adults. Almost 95% of hip fractures happen because of falls. It's the #1 cause of hospital injuries in older adults to fall. 1 in 3 people over 65 fall. Of those, 2 out of 3 fall again. The fear of falling can then lead to a circle where people are afraid to move and afraid to get out, and then they become more deconditioned because they're not going out and doing things, so then they become more likely to fall, and turns into a big circle. In Dane County and elsewhere, there are stepping on classes, you can Google this, and they're classes in fall prevention, and a good resource. Last thing, advanced directives. So advanced directives is who is going to make your decisions when you can't make your medical decisions, when you can't make your medical decisions for yourself. So if you cannot make your medical decisions, a form called an advanced directive determines this is exactly who I want. So this person has my permission to make my medical decisions. Now it's very important that you talk to that person and they know your wishes. You know, do I want everything done under the sun? Do I want nothing done at all? Do I want something in the middle? Your surrogate should know your wishes, and so should your provider, your primary care provider. But if you do not have this form signed, then it's up for grabs about who's going to make your medical decisions. Usually it's the person that yells the loudest. So, or is the most conservative. So it's a very important thing, if you do not have an advanced directive, to create one. I bet here at Oakwood there's somebody that does that. Certainly your doctor's office can give you a form, and you want that on file at your health system. So give it back to your doctor, they scan it in, everybody in your health system can see it. This way you get the choice about what happens in the event you can't make your wishes known. And that's it. So I put references on here so that you would be able to look up some of the things that I refer to in here. I'm available for, if you want to email me, I'll give you my personal email because I'm not here as a work thing. If you want to write it down, it's pretty easy. It's pegtroll, PEGTROLL, @gmail.com. So if anything wasn't clear in here or you have questions after you leave today, feel free to contact me. Sure. Pegtroll, PEGTROLL, short for Peggy Troller, at Gmail. I didn't hear that, I'm sorry. Not .edu. Thank you. Oh, by the way, when we get to the question and answer section, I do have hearing loss. I wear hearing aids. So I won't be able to hear most of what you say unless you're on mic, unless you come up or you speak really loudly. Thanks.
I think what we will do now is have our second speaker, Cheryl Batterman, to make her presentation, and after that, we will take the 10-minute break. Cheryl Batterman has a master's degree in public health, public administration, and she's the manager of the area agency on aging for Dane County with an annual budget of over $5 million. She, in her present position, she develops, contracts, and advocates for senior programs and services for senior adults throughout Dane County. Cheryl has a diverse work experience. She served 11 years active duty in the Air Force as a munition and aircraft maintenance officer and was aerospace study instructor for the Air Force ROTC cadets. She taught at the Madison College. She has held a number of leadership positions in nonprofit organizations, including as the executive director for Northeast Side Senior Coalitions, and for 9 years served on the Sun Prairie School Board. On the personal side, her husband was an Air Force pilot, and her twin sons are presently Air Force pilots. She is very proud of it, and we are very proud that having a full family of veterans and also in service. And she is also proud that she is the grandchild or mother of 2 now. First, I had here one 18 months, but recently she had another grandchild. So please welcome Cheryl Batterman. Thank you.
When Faisal invited me to come today, I knew I would know at least one person in the crowd, and that would be Faisal. Faisal and I go back several years. When I first got hired over at the Northeast Side Senior Coalition, which is way too long, we just called ourselves NESCO, which threw a lot of people off because some of you in the crowd might know that there's a cooking thing, you throw things in. Not like the Instapot now, but it's much bigger and you could put full turkeys in there. But we called ourselves NESCO, and he was on the board of directors and worked on the finance committee. And now, several years later, he serves on our legislative advocacy committee. So we've known each other many, many years. And then I was so surprised to see a friend walk in the door I had not seen in probably 25, maybe 30 years. Someone that I knew when my boys were first born. She was helped me, giving me wonderful advice about nursing, and that is breastfeeding for most of you people. And I was trying to do that while still being in the Air Force, teaching at the University of Wisconsin and going off on business trips and stuff like that. So Ann Altschuler, I mean, when she walked in, I knew who she was right away. I was so excited to see her. So I also must tell you that this is the first time I've ever used one of these thingamajiggies. I feel like I'm a rock star. I feel like I should sing, but I won't, okay? So if I start to stutter or if something happens, just sort of do one of these things and I'll get back on track, okay? I started out working in the military, as Faisal told you, and then I spent about 5 years working at the Ronald McDonald House when it first opened. I was a volunteer initially, and then I started working as their administrative assistant when they actually hired staff at the very beginning of it. I really liked that job, but I tell you, it was really hard on my heart. It was hard on my heart because little kids should never die. Little kids should always have a full life. And there was one Christmas after working there for 5 years that we had 5 children pass away right around Christmas. And I knew right away that my heart would never be able to take that on an ongoing basis. And so I started looking for a different job. And at the time I was going on to the school board in Sun Prairie, and I went to the director of the Sun Prairie, what's it called? Colonial Club, which is out there in Sun Prairie. And I asked their director, what type of intergenerational programming do you have? How do you interact with your seniors and your children that are in the school district? And she said, we don't. I said, why? She says, well, that position, that staff position is empty and we're hiring to fill it. Would you like a job? And I was like, whoa, this is so cool. Yes, I would. So that's how I really got into working with older adults who, for me, I realize that older adults, I mean, let's face it, we're all going to die, right? One day or another, we're all going to die. But seeing older adults living a fulfilling life and enabling them to live in their homes safely, independently, as long as they can, that's where my passion is. I don't want people to have to move into assisted living or nursing homes where it's expensive. Wouldn't you rather stay in your own home? And so that's what we do with Dane County. We're trying to change the landscape to enable seniors to continue being independent and living in their own home. I'm not going to read you all I only have 15 slides, by the way. I counted them when she said she had 30. I thought, oh, how long is mine? So we advocate for senior adults and enable them to maintain their full potential, enhance their quality of life. We, the AAA, here's another, there was a lady who came up earlier and asked what all our acronyms after our names were in that. AAA, when I told my family that I was gonna go work for AAA, they said, oh, could you give me a triptych? I need to go to Toledo. Now that joke works in this crowd, but let me tell you where it doesn't work is with college students today. They don't know what a triptych is. Isn't that amazing? I said, no. I'm not working for the Automobile Association of America. I'm working for the Area Agency on Aging. And they all stared at me like, what the heck is that? Well, if you have to say Area Agency on Aging every day, you're going to call yourselves the AAAs. So I sort of follow acronyms. In the military, we had a lot of acronyms. When I worked at NESCO, we did, and now it's all part of my life. We are co-located in here's another acronym for you, ADRC, the Aging and Disability Resource Center. And my colleague, Deb Solis, is here. She'll speak after me to talk about what the ADRC is. But our AAA is located in the same building as that. We provide direct services for caring for the caregiver program, elder benefit specialists, and a registered dietitian. We contract out. So when Faisal was saying that, oh, she handles $5 million a year, I wish I touched $5 million a year. That would be kind of cool. But my budget is there because what Dane County has decided many, many years ago was to contract out to the organizations in the community where seniors live. And so why have county employees do all the programming and services? Why not hire those who are out there already, know where all the connections are, and have them do the work? And so we contract out case management. Think of them as maybe social workers in your terms. Sometimes people prefer that term. Nutritional meal program, which includes at meal sites, at restaurants, and at your own home through the home delivered or Meals on Wheels program. Cultural diversity program, evidence-based health promotion. Dr. Troller talked about stepping on. We help facilitate by giving safe communities money to run those stepping on programs. Transportation and volunteer programs. For the caregiver program, this is something that is probably one of the best kept secrets in Dane County, which is really unfortunate because we give about $1,000 away to individuals who are caregivers every year. So if you are a caregiver, and the recipient is someone who is, like I have here, person age 60 and over with Alzheimer's disease, you yourself don't have to be over 60. You could be the care recipient, and your daughter or your husband or your whatever, neighbor next door could be the caregiver. You would contact my office. I would have you talk to my staff member who runs these grants, and she will help you identify what are the challenges you are facing when giving caregiving responsibilities. Some people look at this and they say, well, I really want to go to my aunt's, that's too long, my nephew's college graduation. He's graduating from somewhere out in Timbuktu, and I can't leave my mom alone. This grant, through the $1,000, would help pay for respite, meaning having someone come into your home and help you out. It also, some people turn it into, I want to go to water aerobics, and I can't afford the membership to the Princeton Club, okay? And so I really do recommend that you consider or have your family or friends who are doing caregiving to apply for this grant. We also have all kinds of trainings and support groups. So this is really a vibrant and increasing number of people that are becoming caregivers. And I really recommend that you use the services that are available to you. We also have a program called Elder Benefit Specialists. Here's another acronym for you, EBS. We have 3 staff members there at our office who are trained to help seniors when they're having problems with private or government benefits. Okay, you have to be age 60 and above. And they offer free advocacy and legal advice representation. This is an incredible group of 3 ladies, as it turns out, that help seniors if they get evicted, if they all of a sudden receive a notice from Social Security that says you've been overpaid and you owe $20,000. Yes, we've had stories like that. And they will help you fight that so you don't have to pay the $20,000. Okay? If you would like to talk to someone about that, the first thing you would do is call the ADRC. They do the referral onto the program. We're very fortunate to have a network, a vast network of aging services and resources. We're also very, very lucky that we have an ADRC that is represented in every county in Wisconsin. We're the first state to have this. And I might be stealing some of Deb's thunder here, but we also have what we refer to as focal points. This is a term, you guys have heard of the Older Americans Act that was enacted back in 1965 under President LBJ, right? He said we need to have some funding, some protected federal funding to go for our seniors, for services and programs. And everything that I'm talking about today, 95% of what we do is covered through the Older Americans Act, which means the feds up here give it to the state, and the state divvies it up to all the different counties. It comes to us, we divvy it up, and we contract it out with our senior focal points, which are 15 agencies throughout Dane County. This is who they are. Now that might be hard to read, but every one of these in Dane County, this is a map of Dane County, and we have separated all the areas into specific service areas, okay? Now, does that mean that someone from Oregon, who lives in Oregon, can't go to lunch up at Wanakee? It looks like that's a real far away, but Dane County's not that big. You can certainly go and have lunch anywhere. You can go and have attend programs and that. Where we pay more attention to it is we don't want to duplicate services. So our service lines really come into play more when we are talking about our case management program. but we do pay the service areas depending on the number of seniors that live in their service areas, so we have to have the lines drawn and stuff like that. In the city of Madison, you might be more familiar with, we do have the Madison Senior Center, which is not part of what I'm talking about today. They are part of the city of Madison. They do provide programs and services. They do have a meal site in their facility, but it's actually run and operated by the South Madison Coalition of the Elderly. So a little confusion there. You really don't care who's running it as long as you have good food and it's nutritious, right? There are 4 coalitions in Madison, and you can see west, south, east, and north. Forget Middleton, they're not part of this. They're actually going to be merging this next year and becoming one agency, and so they'll be able to share their resources and, more importantly, their staff. It's because some of these organizations have waiting lists when it comes to case management, and by having a combined effort and pooling their staff, they'll be able to address and not have waiting lists. So we're really excited when that's going to come into be. This is a official list of all of them. Has anybody ever been to any of these? Show of hands. Yeah? Okay, so you're familiar. I had a friend once who says if you've been to one senior center, you've been to one senior center. They're all different when you walk in. They're none too alike. Case management, we touched on that. These are you all, the term that you all tend to use are more social workers. We refer to them as case managers. They assess the needs of the client and the client's family to arrange and address whatever the barriers they're facing to enable them to live in their homes as long as possible. They work with the case managers at the hospital when you're being discharged, or a case manager within the hospital system. They're the ones that will come into your home. And some of our case managers work with clients maybe one time for a year, and some of them have been working with them for 25 years because of the different issues that they're facing, okay? They are required to come into your home and meet with you at least once a year and address whatever the issues are. Some of these might be what more people would commonly refer to them as goals and objectives. We refer to them as a service plan. So, and confidentiality with HIPAA is really important. So you can see this is what the Focal Point Case Management program does. And then, not to confuse everyone, because they're always saying, well, what's the ADRC do versus what do you do? It doesn't really matter. No wrong door anywhere. So you can go to your local focal point, or you can call the ADRC or drop in or whatever. The only difference is length of service. So we can help seniors, and there's no length of service, which means you can come in and go to our programs and our services for as long as you want. With the ADRC, there is a little bit of a time crunch in that they're more information assistance. So they're trying to give you immediate information at your fingertips quickly, and they don't work with you on a long-term basis. I'll let Deb explain all that longer. So we have nutrition sites. Has anybody ever been to any of our nutrition sites? Okay, cool, wow, great. We have something really new this last couple of years, and what we call My Meal, My Way, which is located at restaurants, because we're trying to address the stigma that many people have to say, I'm not going to that senior center, that's just for old people. Said my neighbor, who was 96, who lived next to me. And I said, Grandpa Jim, you're 96, of course you're old. I'm not as old as those people that go there. Okay, but come, see, experience, make new friends. This is exciting. He never, ever would come with me. But these are local restaurants that are trying this process, this pilot out. They're located, as you can see, in DeForest, Madison, Mount Horeb, even small little Mount Horeb in Oregon. Our newest one is located at Festival Foods, right there on East Wash. Kind of a cool place. You can go in and grocery shop and also have lunch there on certain days. So, all of this is because it's funded through Older Americans Act. You go in, you pay what you can afford. There's no, well, you make this much money, so you have to pay this. It's an anonymous donation. Okay? If you've been to senior centers lately, you know that they're not the traditional ways that maybe you had when your grandparents were going through. We have tried to address the boomer population coming up because they're not wanting to see people sitting in wheelchairs and walkers and just hovering at the front door. They want to see more vibrant, more healthy lifestyle changes or choices. And so that's why we're trying to address some of the newer, more jazzy things that are occurring out there. Plus, also do all the traditional stuff too, like tax preparation. Faisal helps with that, I know. Opportunities for volunteerism, you wouldn't believe. We have flu clinics, we have chair massage, one of my favorites, and loan closets. So you don't necessarily have to go out and buy all these fangled things that the doctor says, I think you should try this thing out for a while. Just go and borrow one and check it out and see if you really do need it. I'm talking about wheelchairs, walkers, toilet, what are those things you call? Yeah, well, not a commode, but you put it over the toilet and it gives you handrails or whatever so you can get up. Pardon?
The risers?
Yeah. Risers, that's it. Raises your toilet seat a little bit and you've got railings, and those are kind of cool actually. As I get older, I'm kind of enjoying those. Exercise, blood pressure, all that good stuff. Okay? And there's a lot of fun stuff too. They do trips, they do Wii bowling. That used to be really big. I'm not sure if it's as big anymore. Any pool players in here? I'm talking about billiards kind of pool. There's a couple of places. I know at the Stoughton Senior Center and Colonial Club, they've got wood shops. So you can go in there if you have had to downsize and you used to have a wonderful wood shop in your garage or in your basement and you no longer have it. You can go there and use their facilities to make all your woodworking projects. So no wrong door. Here's all of our phone numbers, and please contact us at any time. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Let's take about 10 minutes intermission, and we'll see you back. Thank you very much. Our third speaker for this morning is Deb Solis. Deb is the program specialist at the Aging and Disability Resource Center. She has a business degree. She worked in the field of aging and disability since 2000. Working for the Dane County for the last 15 years, with few years in the middle working for managed care organization. Here is another acronym, IRIS, I-R-I-S organization, which means it's a Medicaid, home, and community-based services. And she works for the Wisconsin Department of Health Sciences. Please help me to welcome Ms. Solis. Can you? Thank you.
Hi, as Faisal said, my name's Deb Solis, and I actually have a lot in common with Cheryl. Both myself and my husband were in the Air Force. I got out after one tour, he retired. Both of our sons are in the Air Force, so we actually mirror each other quite a bit there. And we did. We color coordinated without knowing. So a little bit about how I got to be in public benefits. I was in the public sector. I worked for a title insurance company for over 10 years. And then my father-in-law got sick suddenly, ended up in the hospital, needed to go to a nursing home care, and it was in a different state. But dealing with the people in the public benefits office was beyond frustrating. They were rude, they were just terrible to deal with. And I thought, I can do better than that. So I decided I have to get into public benefits. And lo and behold, I got into it in 2000. I've been there ever since. And I've worked at the ADRC since we opened in November of 2012. This is a picture of one of our information and assistance specialists. Her name's Shia, and she is one of our Hmong, or our only Hmong speaker. This was on the day that we opened. See how neat the desk is? There's no papers, nothing on the desktop, on the computer. So that was our first day. We expected it to be a slow day. We had over 100 calls that day, and we had a couple of people walk in. We didn't even know they knew where we were, and it was a little bit surprising because AT&T published our phone number wrong. They put a Covance number in instead of ours, so all of our phone calls went to Covance, and then they had to call us and tell us what the people said. So that took a little while to get straightened out, but once we got that going, we were doing pretty good. And I'm just going to tell you, I'm going to go a little bit loosely with these slides. I didn't make up the presentation, my manager did, and I think there's a lot of important information I want to make sure I share with you. So, what is the ADRC? It is a place for information and assistance related to aging and anyone with a disability. So we deal with people 17 and a half to the end of their lives. We gather information, we answer questions, we explain options to people. We're almost in all counties in the state. We've still got Adams. Adams is our last little holdout, and they're going to have their ADRC next month. So then we will be statewide. ADRC started in Wisconsin. We were the first in the nation, and we started about 20 years ago. So there was about 5 or 6 pilot counties, and it just expanded from there. And people come from everywhere in the states to look at our ADRCs here in Wisconsin and try to model theirs after it. So it's a very successful model. It's the first, pretty much puts everything together. Instead of having to go to this agency and that agency and be directed over here or told to call 4 other people, we're the first place you should call. And not if you got to go to the hospital, but go to them first. Our mission is to provide comprehensive, unbiased information about services and resources for anybody with a disability or older. So we don't get paid, I mean, we get paid by the county, but we don't have any vendors that pay us. We don't take any money from anybody. Everything is unbiased. When they bring those lovely little baskets to tell us, thank you, remember our name, we have to send them away. Sad sometimes. But our services are always free. We don't charge anything. We say our services are immediately available, no waiting. However, we have been busy since day one, so very, very occasionally, and we're talking maybe a few times a year, we'll have a wait of like 20 or 30 minutes if a person walks in. If they call, we have information and assistance specialists on the phones from 7:45 to 4:30, Monday through Friday, and you're always going to get someone. So people can call, they can email us, they can walk into the office. We have all of those options. It's voluntary. It's up to the consumer what they want. They can come in and they can say, all I want is help finding housing, which is a really tough thing in Dane County. But they say that. They don't want to know about food pantries. They don't want to know about pet services or medical anything. It's whatever they want us to give them. We have a lot of experienced staff. We have 32 information and assistance specialists and 4 disability benefit specialists. They've got backgrounds in elder services, in mental health, in youth with disabilities, in people with cognitive or physical disabilities, so we've got a wide range of backgrounds. We partner with United Way 211 on their database. So when we started out, United Way only had nonprofits in their database. That's their model throughout the U.S. We need to have for-profit because we don't have an income limit or an asset limit. Anybody in the world can come in and see us. So we also had them add agencies, businesses that charge for profit, because there's people that want to pay for services. As I said, we serve older adults, we serve adults with chronic health conditions, with developmental disabilities or physical disabilities. We talk about high school transition, age 17 and a half. That is kids that are in high school that have a physical or a developmental disability, and we'll help get them through into getting adult services, because right now they're being served in the schools, but when they get out of school, that ends. So we'll help them through that. We have a high school transition team that works with them. All income levels, all asset levels, anybody can call us. It could be a family member, a caregiver, a friend, professionals. We get a lot of referrals from hospitals. Peggy calls us. So we get a lot of referrals from a lot of agencies. The one thing we can't do is cold call somebody. So if you call us and you say, my neighbor's having trouble, I'm worried about her, I'd like you to call her and check on her, we can't do that. The consumer has to want to talk to us. So we're fine with saying, can you do a call and have your consumer next to you or have your neighbor next to you, and then they can give permission for us, and then we'll absolutely try to help them as best we can. What we do, we provide information and assistance. So let's say it's somebody calling on the phone. We get about 200 calls a day. So if it's somebody calling on the phone, a lot of times it will be a young adult calling about their parent. And they'll say, well, I came home to visit mom and dad, or mom, I'm concerned because they're not eating, the house isn't as clean as it was, they're not going out as much. They've got concerns about their parent. In a lot of these young adults' world, they jump to the conclusion that mom and dad need to go to a nursing home because there's nothing else. So we talk to them about what are the options. Maybe we can get somebody in the home to help out, somebody to help grocery shop or to help do laundry, just companionship even. So we'll give them resources. We try to keep it in the area that they live in, so that's where our database helps. If they live on the east side of Madison and they want to stay there, we're giving them resources for the east side of Madison. So we can narrow it down quite a bit. A lot of times, one of their questions will lead to another. So maybe they come in and they're like, mom and dad aren't getting out much, so we need transportation. Well, then it turns out that maybe they need transportation, but they also need the Meals on Wheels or something to go to the meal sites, or we'll hook them up with the focal points that Cheryl talked about. So we work very closely with the AAA. We help people understand long-term care services. So previously, if we were talking public benefits, if somebody's going to need to go on Medicaid, they can't afford anymore, their resources have run out, their assets have run down, they need to go on Medicaid. Previously in Dane County, up until February of this year, we had what was called the Community Options Program or the Community Integration Program. They were known by their acronyms of KIP or COP. Those went away February 1st, and we joined the rest of the state, except for Adams County, and we now have Family Care, which is a long-term care program, and we have the Partnership Program, which we've had for about 30 years in Dane County, and we have the IRIS program, which is another acronym, and that is long-term care programs designed to keep people in their home as long as possible. So if a person qualifies for Medicaid and they qualify for one of these long-term care programs, a team will come in and assess them, and they will look at, okay, what do you need to stay in your home? Do you need someone to come and help out with chores? Instead of just giving them a list of options, these are agencies that will perform those services for them. Excuse me 1 second. So, if someone wants, the ADRC will do an assessment of their needs. So they were see if they're functionally eligible for one of these long-term care programs. So what that means is they're going to come out and talk to them, and they're going to say, are you able to bathe yourself? Are you able to toilet yourself? What about making meals for yourself? That type of thing. They'll ask them a series of questions and find that out. Based on that, then they're going to talk about service options. Well, maybe you should go on a long-term care program and we can explore if you're eligible for that. Or maybe it's just something so simple as, we can hook you up with a senior center or get some private funds and get some private care in here. We'll suggest the right services for them, tell them the cost, because that's a big factor with a lot of people. They want to know, how much is it going to cost me before I get this service? We'll help connect them with services. We'll say, are you comfortable calling these agencies by yourself, or do you want us to help you call? And we do a lot of that, where we'll help the person fill out applications or help them make phone calls. And then we'll determine eligibility for government programs. What happens when you call? If you call the ADRC, or if you walk in, or if you send an email, you're going to talk to an information and assistance specialist. And they're going to hear your story, whatever you need to help with. And it could be for you, it could be for a parent, it could be for a child, grandchild. They're going to listen to your story. You're going to work in almost all cases with that particular information and assistance specialist throughout whatever you need, your issue that you've got going on. We want to have you just tell your story one time, and that person will help you with it. As Cheryl said, we don't do long-term case management. We try to keep it at 60 to 90 days, but you could have this problem, and it takes us 60 days to work with you on it, and then at day 30, maybe you have another problem. Well, we're not going to cut you off at the end of that first 60 days. We're going to work through your problems. And people call back multiple times. There's no limit to how many times you can call and talk to us. You determine how much assistance you want. We're going to give you what you want. We're not going to nag you, no matter how much sometimes we think, oh, we need to help them with this or that. We're not going to do it. We're going to try really hard not to. We do follow-up calls. Not all the time, but if we feel like the person either isn't going to follow through on what we told them, you can just kind of tell it in their voice, or is unable to follow through. Then we'll do a follow-up call and say, no, hey, were you able to connect with these people? No? Do you want us to help you a little bit? And then we'll offer to call with them. And we have a lot of people that we help call or we help do applications for. Services that we do, information and assistance, that's through our information and assistance specialist. We'll do those assessments, we'll explain options. We give a lot of health and wellness information. So we'll talk about the stepping on classes. We'll talk about classes living with diabetes, different health and wellness information. We talk about public benefits and how to become eligible for them. We don't tell people how to spend their money. We'll just say, these are the requirements you have to meet. Depending on what's going on, you might want to consult an elder law attorney. We do dementia screenings. All of our information and assistance specialists are trained in how to do a dementia screening. It's just a quick 10-minute one. It's nothing that a hospital or a clinic would do. It's just kind of here's your baseline, here's where we see you are, and you might want to send this to your doctor. The elder benefit specialists are co-located with us. They're part of the AAA, and Cheryl talked about them. We have 4 disability benefit specialists. They work with people that are 17 and a half to 59. And we do information and enrollment into the publicly funded long-term care programs. So if somebody calls and they say, everybody that calls goes through the information and assistance specialist. That's our intake line. Somebody calls and they say, I don't want to talk to you guys, I want to talk to an elder benefit specialist or a disability benefit specialist. They aren't going to automatically do a referral to them. They're going to tease out what is the problem, what is the issue, what do you need help with? And then the information and assistance specialist will decide if they should do a referral to one of the benefit specialists. The reason for that is, there's only 3 elder benefit specialists, there's only 4 disability benefit specialist, and there's a lot of people in Dane County. So got to kind of weed out if the INA specialist can help instead. So I've already talked about that. The disability benefit specialist, besides working with people with physical disabilities and developmental disabilities, they can also work with people with mental health or AODA issues. So they provide information on public and private benefits and programs, just like the EBS do. They help figure out what program you might be eligible for or what benefit you might be eligible for, and help fill out applications. They're going to talk to you about their choices. They're going to provide assistance in obtaining and retaining benefits and provide referrals. One thing we do is we don't provide direct services at the ADRC. So we don't come out and help grocery shop or anything. We connect you with the experts that do. So our people are experts at connecting with the experts. DBSs, a lot of what they do, a lot of the clients they see are people that want to apply for disability. So they're either going to apply for SSDI, meaning they've worked enough, they've got 10 work quarters in their life that they can qualify for, hopefully, for SSDI, or they haven't worked and then they're going to apply for SSI. So they help a lot of people apply for that. And then if the person gets denied the first time, they help a lot of them appeal. So that's probably where they spend 90–95% of their time, is helping people apply for disability, helping them appeal it the first time if they get denied. If they get denied a second time, then they're going to need to seek the help of an attorney. They don't help with that. They help people apply for Medicare and talk about Part B and go for Medicare Part D. They do with prescription drug assistance, so maybe you have no health insurance and you've got an expensive drug that you can't afford. They'll help with programs. Oops, somebody's email there. They'll help with programs to see if they can get that either forgiven or get some help paying for those prescriptions. And if people are low income, they'll help them apply for food share. We have a dementia care specialist at Dane County. We're very lucky. They have them throughout the states, but I believe it's only about 15 counties have one. Our dementia care specialist is part of the Dementia Capable Wisconsin initiative, so she helps a lot in the community. She's helping to talk to facility-based long-term care about dementia, significant challenging behaviors with people with dementia, standards and training, and she helps with research and data collection for the state. This map just shows, if you can see where the green is, where the dementia care specialists are in the state. And we're very, very lucky because a couple years ago, I believe a year and a half ago, the state wanted to cut the funding for dementia care specialists, and it was a long fight and it was a hard fight, and we got to keep it, and it's an amazing program, it really is. So the dementia care specialist, her main goal is to support the ADRC staff and to train them in how to work with people with dementia, and she's very good at that, to assist individuals and families living with dementia, how to remain active and in their homes as long as they choose, and to be a catalyst in creating dementia-friendly communities. She is out in the community all the time training people and training businesses on how to deal with people with dementia in a caring, friendly way, so they know what to do. She is, this afternoon, I believe, training Shorewood police on how to. She's done a lot of firefighters, a lot of policemen, I know the VA hospital has changed their hallways and changed their paint color and the names of their rooms to be more dementia friendly after training with her. So she's done quite a bit on that. She also does a dementia virtual tour, which we did at the ADRC. Were you part of that, Cheryl? Oh, that's right. That was an insight into dementia, which was scary, and She had us blindfolded, goggles that were very hazy. We had earphones on that were blasting sirens and static. The room was dark. She gave you instructions, but you couldn't hear them, and you had to complete tasks in the room. Very frustrating. And it gave you a glimpse into dementia that was a wake-up call, I'll say that. And then she critiqued us, and I learned that I'm not going to be a happy dementia person. Some of the staff didn't want to be in the same place as me. So I got frustrated because I couldn't do the task because I couldn't hear the instructions that she was giving me. So it was an interesting experiment, and she does that with quite a few businesses. With working with the ADRC, our dementia care specialist, she gives us tests, all right, here's what, I'm going to test you on what you know about dementia now, then I'm going to train you, and then I'm going to test you afterwards. She does consultation. She works with a lot of families that have challenging behaviors, and they just don't know what to do. So she gives them a lot of ideas, and she talks through a lot of family situations where these kids want to do one thing with mom, these kids want to do something else, where the family doesn't agree. They all have mom's best interests, but they just don't agree. So she'll talk through how are we going to resolve that, how are we going to work together. So we are so lucky to have her. It's just a little bit on what is dementia. She's got little cards. She also runs 2 programs, Memory Care Connections and the LEAPS program. And the Memory Care Connections is an evidence-based program. It works with the primary caregiver of the person with dementia. So it helps them set up a support service, a support system. They have to come to meetings. It's kind of formal. They have follow-up meetings every 4 months, and then they go for a year, or every 4 months for a year, and then they go for 6 months. So she does that with families, and that's to support the caregiver, not the person with dementia. But if you don't support that caregiver, then the person with dementia is going to suffer. And then she has the LEAPS program, and this is a language-enriched exercise plus socialization. So you take an individual with dementia, and you find a volunteer, and you pair them up, and it's a long-term commitment. So they meet twice a week, and once a week they do a physical activity, and once a week they do a social engagement. And she's having pretty good luck getting volunteers, but could always use more, so if anybody wants to volunteer, I'm sure she won't turn you away. She also does a lot of memory screens. She does wellness tools. She doesn't do anything diagnostic. She gets the baseline early detection. It's one of the important things. And then, as I said, she goes out in the community a lot. She trains the businesses, educates the employers, consults with other professionals. She's in quite a few groups. And I know Peggy mentioned the power of attorneys for healthcare, how important that is. That is our dementia care specialist's next project. Her and a group of attorneys and bankers are going to get together in the fall. Well, they're getting together now, but in the fall they're going to offer and try to get people in to complete their power of attorneys, and not just for healthcare. Healthcare is very important, but also the financial power of attorney, because maybe you've got your health care and you can no longer make decisions, but nobody can get your banking done. Nobody can pay your bills. Nobody can do a lot of things if you don't have that financial POA. So that's this group's next goal, is to try to get as many people get their power of attorneys done. And I know we had a challenge last year at the ADRC for all of our staff to get our power of attorneys done. And I think knowing what we know and knowing how important it is, a lot of us failed to get that done. We did. I was one of the failures. Yep. But then last year, my husband had a heart attack, and boom, I thought, this is important. We should get this done. So then we turned around and got our power of attorneys done. But you really need to have it done now instead of waiting. You can contact the ADRC. Our number is on there, and I also put little cards out front. It's 608-240-7400. We're there 7:45 to 4:30, but there's answering machine if you call afterwards. There's the email 24/7, and believe me, we get them in the middle of the night a lot. You don't need an appointment if you want to come in. You can always call and ask for an appointment, and that's going to just make sure somebody knows you're coming. Our website is on there. We put a lot of information on our website, things that are coming up. Good information to know. And that is it. Jennifer, my manager's name, is on here because I'm standing in for her, but that's her email and her phone number for her directly.
I don't have my pen.
Thank you, Deb. It was very interesting. And well, now we have a Q&A session, and we have 2 volunteers, and we have 2 mics here. So Ann will have one, and here Joan will take the other one.
This is a follow-up on the financial power of attorney. I suspect or hope I'm not alone in that. I'm interested in getting something set up, but if you don't have children or somebody in your life that you are planning to designate as your financial power attorney, can you do referrals on, are there any reputable agencies or something that do that? If you don't have, your own.
Yeah, there aren't any that I know of. And honestly, for the financial, you really, if at all possible, want somebody that you trust, that you
Oh, yes,
know,
that's what
that you
I'm
know
wondering
and
if there's
trust, right? So
agency
I don't know
that's-
that I would. I understand if you have no one, but I myself would be leery of giving it over to an agency that I don't know anything about. Yeah, that is a tough one, and we get asked that a lot.
I have a question about this, the healthcare power of attorney. When you sign those papers, it's hard to know all the situations that might come up, and that's my, worry that maybe you don't want to have a respirator and a feeding tube, but maybe if just an antibiotic would get you over a crisis and you'd be fine for a few years. But it's those nuances, you can't sign a paper. And I feel like it's just pressure from the healthcare institutions to have that paper signed so that they are not left, having to make decisions on the spur of the moment. It's really for their benefit more than for you. And you need individual choices depending on what the situation is.
That's exactly true. It is very true. So I recently changed from one person to another on my power of attorney for healthcare. And so I chose my son. And so I spent many years as a hospice nurse. My kids know me. From the time they were little, I was a hospice nurse. They're very aware of my opinions. I'm kind of a total let me go when it's time kind of person. And it still was a conversation I had with my son that lasted quite a while because of those issues. It's, because there is no cut and dried answer to a lot of questions. Just know that if you do not have a power of attorney for health care in place and you can't speak for yourself, you will get everything. If that's okay with you, then okay, then you don't need a power of attorney for health care, but you will get every treatment. They cannot stop until you are very, very dead. If you don't have someone who can speak for you that would say, I know her well enough to know her wishes, and she would want this, but not that. Yes, she would want an antibiotic if she had pneumonia. That's one of the questions I put to my parents when they made me their power of attorney. And, yeah, I want an antibiotic, but no, I don't want to be on a ventilator or, those kinds of things. So it it's an important position to be somebody's power of attorney for medical care, because you could be put in a difficult position. And sometimes it is really hard. Is this a short-term or is this a long-term issue? And you may not know right away, So it can be complicated. And you have to trust your surrogate to be able to represent your personal wishes. But if you have nothing, then A, you will get everything, and B, the other thing that is on a power of attorney for medical care is the permission to have you go into a rehabilitation or skilled nursing facility if needed. If you do not have somebody that's designated by your power of attorney to have that permission, then you'll need to go through guardianship, which means you'll sit in a hospital for several weeks until a court case goes through to have somebody named as your guardian, and then that decision can be made. So that's another downfall to not having a power of attorney for medical care. I see somebody who might be wanting to talk about this as well.
I have a question. I know that the senior centers have case managers, I think, too. How do they coordinate with you? Are they different, or what? I'm just curious how they're different.
Coordinate with whom? First thing we do is we pay them. So there's a good connection there. Each of the focal points, each of the 15 focal points have different funding sources for the case management program. We're just one of them. For instance, they might receive it from the city of Madison, wherever they're located, or the city of Middleton or whatever. So we contract with them to provide this service. We have developed policies, procedures, intake forms. I mean, it's a very formalized program, but once the case manager goes out and meets with the senior, it's not as formal. It's a very informal relationship there. So we also provide training for the case managers 8 times a year, a half-day training. So did that answer your question? Yeah. There's like around 40 of them. Some of the focal points are very lucky. They have more than, some have 4. I think there might be one that has 5. They're not all full-time. But some of the rural focal points have maybe 1, and that person might be part-time. So it all depends on what their funding sources are. Thank you.
I think this is a question for Peggy. I discovered I have on power of attorney for health care for an older cousin of mine, and discovered that does not kick in until 2 physicians say the person is incompetent to make their own health decisions. So, just because you think you've got a power of health care, you've got to do something else. And one of the things that I learned with her was that there is a new HIPAA, or a relatively new HIPAA requirement, that if she was being discharged from the hospital and going into rehab, and we were asking about, just immediate things. How long do you expect? What, will the condition reoccur, et cetera. They couldn't give me any of that information unless she was there. She had to sign a form. Now, this was Marshfield Clinic
And
that
this
I was dealing with.
And she had been already declared incompetent?
She had not been declared
okay. All right.
incompetent.
Correct.
But she's, there's dementia there, but it's the situation. The doctors were saying, well, we could do it, but eventually she was going back to her own home, and she was kind of borderline. And the thing is that can happen to any of us going into a hospital or into an emergency room, and what are we supposed to do when we go home? We may not remember what we were told to do, or when we're supposed to go back for a follow-up appointment. And if the medical staff can't release that information to a family member or a friend, you've got to, that requirement.
two different issues there, both really important. So in Wisconsin, now different states have different laws regarding power of attorney and when it takes effect. And I don't know all of them, so I won't speak to any other state because I've just heard things. But in Wisconsin, when you have a power of attorney for medical care, just because you've signed it, so just because my son is on there, it does not mean he can make any decisions for me right now. And he also cannot call my doctor and ask for information except I have signed that form. So there's a consent for verbal communication that I've given. My son doesn't know that, by the way. So this is my way of protecting my privacy, is that my son could call my doctor and get information, but he doesn't know that. So he wouldn't do it unless there was a problem, right? But then they would have permission to talk to him. So there's protections built in to the way the power of attorney works. So, sometimes, there are nuances that drive nurses crazy, that our poor social worker has to come and say, but this is why it's like this. And we say, but it shouldn't be. Kind of, there are protections built in. So, yes, the power of attorney, the surrogate, cannot do anything until a person is declared incompetent by two physicians. Until that time, they are what we say their own person. So I am my own person at this time. That's that way medical people talk. While you are your own person, you get to make all your decisions. You can still be your own person and have dementia. It takes, you have to get to the point where you are unable to make your decisions. So yes, it can be a little frustrating because in your cousin's case, you want information about what she needs to do because she may not remember it. The best thing to do is to have somebody there at discharge to hear all of that stuff, just sitting in there with her. It's not a perfect world because there are always gray areas and always times when one thing can cause a problem even though it's meant to help another thing. Is that clear? Did I?
We also receive phone calls, just to follow up on that. Someone will call up and say, my neighbor, she needs help. Are you guys helping her already? And because of HIPAA, would you want us to talk about you to your neighbor? No. So we'll just, okay, that's very interesting. We cannot call her up and check on her. If you feel uncomfortable, you certainly can call for a wellness check by the police, or you can call the Adult Protective Services, which is in Dane County. They're part of the Adults at Risk, and they also deal with elder abuse investigations. But with HIPAA, we have to be very careful. We certainly can talk to people, but we have to have permission from the person who we're talking about to be able to talk about them. And so we have what we refer to as release of information, or ROIs. We love acronyms, don't we? We have an acronym for everything. So there are ways around that.
I have a friend who has parents up in Marathon County, which apparently does not have a DCS. And his parents have dementia. If they call the ADRC up there, what happens? Because they don't have a specialist. Would the ADRC up there be able to help them wend their way through whatever has to be done? Can they point them in certain directions?
They will be able to give them the resources that are available in Marathon County.
Okay.
And there's also always the Alzheimer's Association.
The other question is, based on the previous one, are there objective standards for doctors to declare people incapable of doing their own thing? Mm-hmm. And who ends up selecting the doctors who make that decision?
Good point. The standards that they'll use to determine capacity are often, so I see people when they're in the hospital. So I'm going to come from a hospital point of view. That's what I know best. In the hospital is, does a person understand why they're in the hospital? Can they understand the treatment options that are available to them and the pros and cons of selecting different options? So So I tend to work closely with the acute care for elders team, and at the hospital, the ACE team, they do a lot of these capacity assessments. And they'll go in and just sit down and talk for a while and determine, does a person know why they're there? Do they understand their treatment options? Do they understand that if they chose to not have treatment, what would happen? And it's not like a checklist. It's just, do they have a good enough understanding to safely make their own decisions? And usually the way in the hospital would work is if a person were to be declared incompetent in the hospital, it usually would be that ACE physician who's making the assessment would be the first one, and usually somebody who's on the inpatient team would be the second physician. So people who are working directly with the patient. Often in the outpatient world, it would be the primary care provider and somebody within their clinic who they would bring in to also do an evaluation.
This question was by someone who had to leave, so I'm hoping that they will watch the video and get the answer. And the question says, what happens when an EMT and the ambulance arrives at your house? You have a directive, you have a do not resuscitate directive. How does the EMT react, or what happens? Please.
So EMTs are not providers who can make clinical decisions often. So they are bound by protocols. So there is something called a community DNR bracelet. So if you are someone who very much wants to have no life-saving efforts at all done, you can get from your primary care provider a bracelet that you wear, and when an EMT sees that, they would not resuscitate you. They understand your do not resuscitate, you've made that clear. If you do not have that bracelet in place, you have to get everything. The EMTs do not have the ability to pick and choose the services they provide. So you either get nothing or you get everything. Now, once you get to the emergency room, then the more nuances can come in. So perhaps once you get to the emergency room, the doctors there open your chart and they see that your primary care physician has put in there that you prefer to be a do not resuscitate person. Then things are more likely to stop, but it's always harder to stop a train than get it going. And the EMTs do not have the ability by law to make that decision. So you either get their full court press or you have a bracelet on. No, it's a specialized bracelet that you have to get from your physician, and there's a form to sign, and it's a particular bracelet.
I have one personal comment to share with you. When I needed help, I asked, and they directed me to the ADRC, and that's what I did, to start my need to take care of an immediate issue at home. Finally, I want to take this opportunity to thank the three speakers for their effort coming here and sharing with us their knowledge and the information. We appreciate that very much. And as a token from the association, I have here a nice looking red pillows and what's the other thing? Oh, and blanket. So maybe it's not the time of the season, but you can use it next year. Yeah. And please, let's give them a hand for their effort. Thank you very much.